is going on, citizens of the Reject Nation? This is my favorite news out of DC since Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. This is my favorite bit of DC news since I have started talking about comic books. This is DC getting their Kevin Feige's. This is the hierarchy of power changing as The Rock promised. This is how DC builds a powerful platform and foundation and shared universe and TV and everything we want. This is James Gunn and Peter Safran becoming the heads of now DC Studios. That's right, it is no longer DC Films. It is not quite the DCEU since it never really was. They changed that name a few times. DC Studios is now run by two titans. Now, before we get into it, please do leave a like in this video, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this excellent news. My bias might be part of this journey. You'll know what I think of it immediately. And please do hunt me down on TikTok. I'm going to be reporting on this as things develop. You get 15-second, 30-second, 1 minute long breakdowns of comic books and movie news, and this is the zenith. I am so very excited. Let's get into it. Now, let's kick it off with James Gunn. I am going to talk about Peter Safran in a second because I think that guy is being slept on as far as trending. We'll get to him in a minute, but James Gunn, we have to acknowledge how insane this is, how many different butterfly effects had to occur for this very specific event to happen. Not only is he, as a filmmaker, one of the boldest filmmakers in the game, he is always taking big, broad swings and chances, which is a great sign for what DC has to come. Not only is a big comic book fan in that he loves the most obscure character, he can also make you love the most obscure character. How excited are you for Cosmo after the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special? How much do you love King Shark? How much is Rocket Raccoon part of your life? These are not characters that are known. He knows how to make the underdog work as well as the weird comic thing work. He's also someone who's good at world building. Go back to 2008. You've got Iron Man starting, and then you've got a bunch of superheroes that are not well known, but they're at least known. Then a couple years later, not that far in, you've got James Gunn doing Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I'll totally own, I was one of the people that was worried. I was like, ooh, is this the first taste of Disney buying a thing? Is this a talking tree and a raccoon? Is this toys? I was really worried that's what happened. And then I saw what James Gunn did with these characters, and I was so aware that in that case, the hierarchy of Marvel had just changed. He was able to make a cosmic movie totally realign what I think Marvel had been originally planning because of how much we loved that cosmic family, how much we loved that bunch of assholes. That changed Marvel. He is a world builder in his own right. So what had to happen was he had to make Guardians of the Galaxy. It had to do so shockingly well that years later it would be cited as the reason that the Suicide Squad got effectively re-edited from the movie it was going to be with David Ayer to the trailer that was edited for Comic-Con, and then reshaped to be the trailer that was effectively a James Gunn tone. And then he would have to get fired from Disney and then hired at DC to make the Suicide Squad movie they had apparently always wanted. That then did exceedingly well, especially for an R-rated movie opening in a pandemic. Got a spinoff with Peacemaker because it was so critically acclaimed as well as people watching it. Then got rehired at Disney to not only finish his own trilogy of Guardians of the Galaxy, but also make a spinoff, which we just got the trailer for with the holiday special. And all of that being a sense of world building that led him to be one of the architects of Infinity War and Endgame, one of the brain trusts that was beholden to making what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is while Homeboy was working on DC's shared universe. So this is the perfect example of how you build out DC. He knows comics, he knows bold choices with movies, and he knows world building. He's going to be able to do what Kevin Feige does and do it with pizzazz, do it on stage, present in Hall H, make comic fans invested, and he's one of us, just like Kevin Feige is. Under that hat, Kevin Feige is a ride-or-die nerd that knows and cares about what panel of what issue things are happening on. So is James Gunn. James Gunn knows the obscure stuff from the 70s, the weird esoteric of the 60s, the strange crime-ridden of the 70s and 80s. Then you get into the crazy image of the 90s. The guy has been there through it all. He's got the receipts. He's going to make the DC universe the greatest hits of DC like it needs to be. The thing that Marvel does best is they look at giant swaths of comic book, 10 years, and then they consolidate it into, like, now that's what I call music of the comic books. James Gunn does that, and arguably does does it with even more obscure characters. So everyone that's been concerned about the future of Batman, the future of Superman, they shouldn't be, because this man already knows those, and he's going to make your Booster Golds and your Blue Beetles sing. He's going to be the one that cares about the Blue Beetle movie as much as the Superman movie, but he's not going to stop Superman from happening, and he is surely not going to take his head off. He will be seen with a face at all times. Henry Cavill's back. That's the face of Superman, and James Gunn knows it. This is literally the best case scenario. Now let's talk about Peter Safran. We need to acknowledge how great a move this is to have Peter Safran as well. Now, when you look at the things that are working with Marvel, they've got a very, very singular entity in Kevin Feige, a producer like we've never really had before, because he's three things. He's a showman, he's an excellent, exceptional, top-of-the-line producer, and he's a ride-or-die comic book junkie. Now, when you combine James Gunn and Peter Safran, who are both excellent producers, so there you go, you solved the producer issue. James Gunn is a genius of comic book lore and an excellent showman, and then you've got an on-site genius creative producer in Peter Safran. So you've got a great behind-the-scenes producer in James Gunn, a great on-the-day, on-set, available, very hands-on producer in Peter Safran, and both are giant comic book fans, and then you've got the showmanship of James Gunn. This is the Frankenstein Feige I've dreamed of. I can see it now. We've got Hall H with James Gunn coming out on stage and introducing people. You've got Peter Safran, who's on set even on movies that James Gunn's directing. You've got this man who, I'm talking about Safran here still, who is so hands-on that he was one of the key figures in making sure the Peacemaker show happened in spinning off of the Suicide Squad. I'm going to totally own a behind-the-scenes moment right here. I did press on Shazam, and I toured with Shazam. I loved Shazam so much that I was with it in New York, California, Hawaii. I was with the cast. I took two of them comic book shopping. Shazam was my baby, and at every turn, I was so impressed at how hands-on Peter Safran was, how important the fan experience was to him, how much he wanted to know, how much we saw in the lore, how much he knew about the Shazam lore, which frankly, let's be honest, Shazam is not a well-known quantity, and how much he was happy that the actors were so invested. And then I actually ran into the guy not that long ago. He recognized me on the streets in Burbank, and we had a great conversation about Peacemaker and about how much he wants certain things to happen in DC. Not going to talk about that on air because I hope they happen, but the guy was so invested in my experience as both a journalist, a fan, a comic book junkie. He wanted to know what I thought of this decision, and he was so in love with Peacemaker. He was so giddy about what had been done with Peacemaker. That gives me hope in the DC universe going forward. So we've got this Frankenstein I talked about. We've got the producer, comic book, and showman all on stage in these two, and we've got Peter Safran being I have only heard amazing things about as far as what he's like on set. This is a man that turns small budget movies into large budget successes. He got his start in horror. He's done a bunch of very bold things like Ryan Reynolds Buried, and then he went on to make sure Aquaman made its $1 billion, made Shazam for pennies on the dollar for what superhero movies cost, and that did well. So that's what we need right now. We need a director and a producer that are both good at making this much money into this much money, because right now, if you haven't noticed, that's what DC is struggling with. They're looking at how to leverage the money they have and rebuild from the ground up. So you've got two guys that can do that, and best of all, they're comic book fans. And even better of all, they care about our opinion. I don't know anyone outside of the many aforementioned times Kevin Feige that loves the fans so publicly, so directly as much as these two. Honestly, this is the best case scenario for DC. DC is in the best sets of hands it could be, and the future of DC is looking bright. This feels like when you're reading a Superman comic and you turn the page and you see him flying outside the planet and everything's like birds are chirping, things are singing. This is how I feel about DC right now. I am a giant DC Comics fan. I have wanted DC Comics to have a stranglehold on movies in so many ways for so long. It only makes Marvel work harder, it only makes DC fans have a place to feel welcome, and it only makes both universes better, and that only leads to better films. If DC makes bold chances, then indie films can make bolder chances, because movies will be doing like a rising tide lifts all boats is what I'm saying. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm overjoyed at this news. James Gunn, you're the best. Peter Safran, thank you so much for caring. DC, you're in good hands, and I cannot wait to be along for the ride. You guys better ready for like 800% more DC content, because your boy is in. Let's get it.